I think it's important to set what the Prime Minister is going to say in context. So we're just going to run through some of the recent data from the UK and from England. And we're starting off with the overall rates in terms of confirmed cases going back to April, when obviously we had very high numbers. The numbers came right down. But as you can see on this graph, the numbers are now going up, and going up really much more rapidly over the last few days. Next slide, please. It's important to think about this also in terms of the ages where this is happening. There's some very good news in this, and that's at the bottom of this graph. And what that shows is that in older people and in the younger children, the rates remain really quite flat. But in some age groups, the rates are now going up really quite sharply. At the top of this graph, we have the rates in people aged 20 to 29 in the light green, and then 30 to 39 in the yellow numbers. But what you can also see is some rapid upticks elsewhere, and in particular the light blue, which is quite a broad age band of 10 to 19. I'll come back to that number later. Next slide, please. And looking at the test positivity rate, so this is the proportion of tests done that turn out to be positive, these are following exactly the same pattern. And that's important because that makes clear this is not just because of increased testing, but this is actually a real phenomenon where the numbers of cases are going up. Next slide, please. In this slide, we have split out the various ages from 11 to 21 years old. And in the bottom two lines, what you have is people in dark blue, 11 to 14, and in the orange, 15 to 16. And in those groups, as you can see, the rates of increase have been very small indeed. But if you look at the group who are 17 to 18 in the olive colour and 19 to 21 in the magenta colour, both of those have gone up really quite steeply since the middle of August. Next slide, please. And again, exactly the same pattern is seen if you see the test positivity. So this is not an effect of greater testing in these groups. Next slide, please. Importantly, we also need to look at what happens if we do nothing in this situation, or if we intervene effectively. And what we have here, and this is a slightly complicated slide, but it is important to understand the need for action, is we have three other major countries in Europe, and what we've done is we moved the timelines so that, for example, France, which is in red, and the UK, which is in blue, we've moved the timelines so that the UK's graph is brought 4 weeks forward so that it overlies the French graph. And what you can see is we're following a pattern extremely similar to what France followed. And as you can see in France, that rate has continued to go up. And the same is true in Spain. But also you can see, and this is an example from Belgium, in Belgium the same sort of graph was happening. Initially a rate went up quite sharply in the way that it has here in the UK, but then they took decisive action and at that point the rate stabilised and in fact then subsequently began to come gradually down. So this is a clear indication that if you act rapidly and decisively when these changes are happening, there is a reasonable chance or a good chance of bringing the rates back down under control. Next slide, please. So we're now moving on to an animation, and this is a graphic to show how the spread occurred through the UK over the period in which we've had coronavirus. So if we could start the graphic. And what this has is lots of hexagons, each one of them being numbers of cases, and the lighter the number the smaller the number, and then they get darker. And these are the data for England. There would be something very similar for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And as you can see, through March and through April, the graphs just get darker and darker across the whole country. And then as people respond to the request for social distancing, as the lockdown happens, they get lighter again across the whole country. And things are improving all the way through July and into the beginning of August. And then you start to see the numbers begin to creep up again. And this is the situation we now find ourselves in, where the darker colours again are increased numbers, initially relatively concentrated, but now we can see this spreading across the whole country. So this is not just in a very small number of places, this is across the country. And that is the reason why we need to go on to act. If we could end the animation at that stage, please. Thank you very much.